Welcome, everyone, to another Stewardship in Motion. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have another great stewardship topic. We're going to discuss a topic that I know is important to all of you. We're going to talk about how to break a cycle, specifically the behavior that triggers debt. I'm calling it breaking the cycle, the behavior behind the balance. So that's what we're going to talk about. I think this is a topic that will resonate with many of you, particularly now that our economy is softened. And no matter where you look at the statistics, our national debt has increased and our consumer debt as individuals has increased significantly. If you've ever had consumer debt before, you paid it off, you told yourself that this time is going to be completely different. So after you paid it off, you felt some relief, you felt that freedom. And then after some time, maybe 6 months later, you log into your credit accounts and it's back. Maybe it crept up slowly, few small purchases here, a hard month there, and before you knew it, you're looking at a balance you thought you'd never see again. I've been there myself, so I can definitely identify with this feeling of your debt feeling cyclical. We're going to talk about why that keeps happening, and more importantly, how to make it stop, hopefully for good. I'm not a believer that you should have zero debt at all. I believe debt is a tool that can help you leverage the resources you have now to acquire assets. So I think that is the responsible way to use your debt to acquire assets. If you've been following me for some time, you know I'm a real estate guy. I like using debt to buy cash flowing real estate that will in turn give me back dollars that I can use to pay down said debt. So that can be a bit of a cycle, but it's a cycle that's actually growing your net worth. Versus if you're a person who has just consumer debt and you're just consuming with your credit card debt and other types of debt, it's not as advantageous because you're paying that back with earned income, dollars you've traded your time for. So we're going to talk about this. Again, welcome back to Stewardship in Motion. If I haven't formally introduced myself, I'm Lionel Allen with the Minding Our Business Academy. And let's get right into it. We're going to look at a scripture from Romans. We're going to look at Romans 13 and 8. And it's a very interesting, sharp scripture. It almost pierces like a dagger when you get into it. So let's read it. Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. Now, last week we talked about debt from the perspective of freedom. We talked about how the borrower becomes a servant to the lender. We expose those chains. But tonight, I want to go a little layer deeper because here is something that doesn't get talked about enough. Many people can pay off debt and still end up right back in the same place, like I mentioned earlier. The balance changed, but the behavior didn't. This is not a conversation about numbers. This is a conversation about patterns. Like I said, I'll be completely transparent with you. I've been here. I've been here several times before. I've cleared up a balance, felt good about it, felt like I finally had it all figured out. And then something began to happen, change. I didn't even realize it, that I was falling right back into the same habits that created the problem in the first place. So nobody told me that the issue wasn't actual debt. It's the pattern underneath the debt. And I keep treating the symptom while the root cause went untouched. That's what I want to save you from tonight because it's not a character flaw. It's not a willpower problem. It's not that you are bad with money. It's that no one ever showed you how to identify and change the system that keeps producing the same result. The real issue lies underneath the balance. It can be emotional spending after a hard week. It can be comparison. So you're scrolling through social media and someone else that you know, like and or respect, they have a highlight reel showing the vacations they went on and the toys that they own, and suddenly you feel like you're behind or you feel that, what they call it, FOMO, that fear of missing out. And you feel like I have to keep up with that. Or it can be a convenience. I know for a lot of people, the subscriptions, the DoorDash, the Uber Eats, the Grubhub, just the convenience of not having to cook, not having to go out, that can cause us to go into some debt. It can also be like what we're experiencing right now. There's a war going on. Price of gas in many places has gone up over $1 per gallon. So lifestyle inflation. That's what we would call that. I was on vacation last week. I left Georgia. We drove down to through Alabama into Florida, and to actually see the swing or the change in gas prices along a 5 hour trip was mind blowing. Here in Georgia, gas is depending on if you where you go. If you go to the big box stores, you can get gas for about $3.40. Most of the gas stations somewhere about 369, 370. We cross over into Alabama. It's about 365 ish in most places, right off the freeway. You know, right off the freeway is probably the most expensive gas you can find. So it's somewhere about 365 up to 375. And then we cross into Florida, and the first gas station is $4.12. And it just kept going up. And it was just astounding to see that in such a short or small geographic area, lifestyle inflation is hitting people pretty hard to varying degrees. So if you look at this problem, it's simply an absence of a plan. So debt is often behaviors made visible in numbers. You might want to write that down. I have it here at the bottom of the slide. Debt is often behavior made visible in numbers. So your statement reflects your system. That's what I want you to remember. When you look at that bank statement, as you look at that number increase, it's a reflection of your system. You either have a system or you don't have a system, and that's what is being reflected. If the system is broken, debt returns every time. The card is not the problem. The actual transactions of what you bought is not the problem. The account is not the problem. It is the habit. The habit is the problem. This is why people say, I paid off the card and somehow I'm back maxed out again. The cycle continues because the behavior continues. So we're going to work on a framework to help us break that cycle. And so in this framework, I'll just give you the answers right up front. This is no gatekeeping, not a test. There's really just three core actions that can help you break that cycle. Number one, you have to name the trigger. There is a trigger to the behavior. Two, you have to build in a pause, something that breaks the initial reaction or whatever makes that feeling kinetic where you go out and begin to spend. I grew up in a culture where folks would get paid on a Friday and it was, the newest pair of Jordans, whatever new outfit for the weekend to go partying or whatever. So it was a cycle of consumption. And that's what begins to build our debt. And third, we have to install new programming, new habits, new behaviors. We'll have a framework that you can actually use, not just information, because information doesn't solve anything. We have to have a system. So let's go. Let's talk about first naming the trigger. Every unhealthy financial habit has a trigger. Like we says here in the slide, a cue. It might be a moment, a feeling that comes right before the behavior. Like I said, for some people, that cue was actually getting paid, dollars arriving in their account. And I heard this best many years ago. I was at a real estate mentorship conference, guy by the name of Brian Buffini. And he was the first person I ever heard break down the psychology of money in this way. He grew up in Ireland, pretty poor, moved to the US, moved to Los Angeles, of all places, and he was a waiter. And he was it's very similar to the Susie Orman type story. And he was looking at the people who were coming into this restaurant, and he would often ask people what they did. And a gentleman told him he was a real estate agent. So he actually began to study and got his real estate license. And he made a lot of money at a really young age. I think he said he was in his 20s when he made his first $1 million. And he went broke also in his 20s after making, I think he said, nearly $2 million. And he said at the root of it was the money made him uncomfortable. And he says that's what happens when we come from situations, backgrounds, cultures where we don't have a lot of money. And then when we get our hands on resources, it makes us uncomfortable. And here's the key statement that he said that it stabbed me like a knife in the middle of the conference. He said, the money makes us uncomfortable, so we do everything in our power to get rid of it. And immediately I knew he was right. It's that feeling of, okay, I have this money, I'm uncomfortable by it. So what do? I get rid of it so I can return to a state of comfort. And like I said, we put it into clothing, cars, subscriptions, entertainment, alcohol, vices. We put the money in a myriad of places. And that's why when we look at people who get windfalls, I've talked about this several times, win the lottery, athletes and entertainers that get large boluses of money for at one time, the money makes them uncomfortable. And then when people, their family, friends, everyone approaches them for the money, because they're uncomfortable, they do everything in their power to get rid of the money. So that may be the cue, that may be the moment. Yours may be different, mine may be different, but ultimately we have to identify what is that feeling, what is that trigger. And most people have never stopped to identify theirs, exactly what it is that makes them feel this way. So let me ask you something. The question is right here in the middle of this slide. And I want you to really sit with this question for a minute and really get to the bottom of it. When do you tend to overspend? Or you can even add to it, when do you do your impulse spending? So really let that question sit with you and think about it for yourself. When do you encounter these situations where you either overspend or you have this spontaneous spending that you didn't plan? Is it at the end of a long week? Or is it just when you want to quote unquote treat yourself? Have you been grinding and you feel like, man, I've been working hard, working overtime? And I always use this tagline because I've heard it so much. I work hard, I deserve it. Every time I've heard someone misappropriate some money, it usually, that sentence is in there. I work hard and I deserve it. Is it, like I said earlier, scrolling through Instagram or TikTok and seeing someone else who seems to be living bigger than you are? You're not living better. My pastor in California, Pastor McDaniels, he helped us with this. He used to say, people don't live better than you, they may live bigger than you. Most people who live in the United States, we have to realize, if you have plumbing inside of your home, you're probably in the top 5% of the world. If you have AC, electricity in your home, running water, and functioning plumbing in your system, you shrink to even a smaller percentage globally. So we have to look at, it's not that people are living better than us, they may just be portraying a bigger lifestyle. Maybe it's the vacations, designer, luxury outfits. 70% of the people who buy luxury brands are people who actually are what they call financially developing, which is just politically correct term for people with financial challenges, right? Is it the restaurants? Is it the dining out? And then you see these things in social media, and suddenly you feel like you're behind, you're not with the times. Again, someone's living bigger and better than you are. Or is it after a hard conversation with your spouse or a loved one? Or maybe you had a really stressful day at work and you find yourself at on Amazon, or all of the discount retail places, Ross, Marshalls, the outlet stores, wherever it might be. Maybe it's midnight and you're still putting things in your cart on various websites, and things you didn't even start out wanting, just things that you either saw on Instagram, you saw a commercial for it, you saw some influencer talking about it, and it triggered you. And here's where you all of a sudden say, I need that, right? So you need to understand, you cannot change what you have first not observed. It's right there on the bottom of that slide. That's the most important thing. You cannot change it if you're not aware that you're going through this emotional cycle, and then you can begin to put some things in place to mitigate those triggers. So you have to name the trigger. Don't judge yourself for this. Don't allow it to shame you or be ashamed, but put a name on what that trigger is for you personally. because you cannot interrupt a pattern that you've never identified. You have to identify it, and that's the only way you can begin to interrupt it. So this week, I want you to pay attention when the urge to spend outside of whatever you planned or whatever you have as a responsibility shows up. I want you to pause and ask yourself, what just happened right before this? And then write it down. Again, were you scrolling on social media? Did you see an influencer talk about something? Did you have a hard day at work? Was it a difficult conversation? What triggered the impulse? Let's move on to the second item here. Number two, you have to build in some sort of pause. I've talked about this several different times. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So once you've named a trigger, you need a system that creates space in between that trigger and feeling and the action. Because most financial damage happens in the gap between feeling something and then doing something. So you feel stressed, you spend, you feel behind, you spend, you feel like you deserve it, you spend. But you see, it is a cycle that's ending the same way every single time. So you have to pause the interruptions and that automatic response. So here's what a pause system looks like in practice. You might have heard of this one before. You've heard people talk about the 24-hour rule. So if it's not in the plan, you wait 24 hours before purchasing it. Most impulse urges don't survive a night's rest. So that's good to know. So the 24-hour rule is a great disruptor of the behavior. The next one, check the category first. So I talk a lot about your money being held in different categories, assigning different purposes for your accounts. So before any unplanned purchases, open up that spending plan. If you need a spending plan, you can jump into the Minding Our Business Academy on the school platform. We have a whole lesson around building your spending plan. It will serve you to go through that. So check your spending plan. If the category is empty, the answer is no. The plan will protect you from yourself, from those behaviors. That is what you want to get under control. Accountability partners, that's big. So people have accountability partners for all types of purposes. Having a financial accountability partner is huge. That will help you. So send a text, you don't even have to call, and let them know what you're thinking about, and just have another person to be a sounding board before you buy it. Tell them. So that out loud conversation adds accountability, and it's one of the most powerful pattern interrupters. Now, I'll throw a bonus in here that's not on the slide. This is one I've been teaching for years. Take your credit cards, whichever credit cards you use the most, get a cup of water. And I got this idea literally from it's a literal interpretation of the word. So you take your credit card, you put it in a cup of water, and you put it in the freezer. You freeze your accounts. I remember the first time I heard that, freeze your accounts, and that's where I got the idea. And it doesn't mean you can't spend the money, but you have to take the card out and wait for it to thaw out. And that works just like the 24-hour rule. It gives you a couple hours to allow the heat of that attraction to wear off a little bit and gives your rational mind time to catch up. Maybe in that time, you employ some of the other things I talked about in the slide. Maybe you check your spending plan and call and text your accountability partner. And by freezing the card, it just makes it inaccessible for a small period of time. And then that allows you to break out of that cycle. So I want you to, again, here's the key thing, a pause, and that will protect the purpose of whatever that money originally was, because all your money should have a purpose. But that moment to pause, allow again that temptation to spend it to cool off just a little bit, and that allows you to recalibrate your stewardship mind. Because the difference between a reaction and stewardship is not just about what you do with your money, it's about creating enough space to make intentional decisions rather than emotional ones. And that's why we spend so much time in the Minding Our Business Academy, creating spending plans, budget tools, the weekly meeting. It's all about the plan. So build the pause and protect the purpose of whatever that money was originally assigned to. The third step, install the new. So here's something behavioral science and scripture both agree on. A habit cannot simply be removed, it must be replaced. You cannot just stop doing something. The brain doesn't work that way. The trigger's still there, it's still firing. The craving will still come. If there's nothing to replace the old behavior, you will default right back to it. So that's where you have to engage yourself, your creativity, and find a new habit to replace the old habit that you've had in reacting and overspending. So the question is not just what am I going to stop doing, it's also what am I going to do instead. So let me give you some direct replacements. Instead of emotional shopping, maybe you sit down and do some journaling. I'm a big bullet journal guy. It takes me a little bit of time to design my bullet journal every single week. Maybe that's something you want to do. Prayer always helps. When you feel the heat of that emotion, sit down, journal, and maybe pray through what you're actually feeling. Instead of the impulse spending, maybe you go in, you hear me talk about the operating account and the opportunity account. Maybe you get in there and set up some automations, right? Because you still want the impulse of seeing the money move. Maybe you move the money from your lifestyle account into your savings account and let that trigger build something towards your wealth, towards your future, instead of just draining out your funds. Maybe instead of dining out and you don't feel like cooking, you build a meal plan and you follow that for the week. I have actual scheduled days of the week that I have my meal prep done. So Monday night and Wednesday night, those are already scheduled on my calendars to do my meal prep. And that stops me from getting into a situation where I've been working all day, doing different things, and now it's late. I'm hungry, and you just want to solve the problem real quick. It helps you from a health standpoint as well as a financial standpoint. So make it something you look forward to. And then that way it doesn't feel like you're depriving yourself. And then you can make a habit of it. I like going on social media instead of looking at the glitz and glam type stuff and finding cool recipes, cool things to try out and make those things at home. There's all kinds of food influencers out there. I know there's names for them, and I may be missing it, but on YouTube, Instagram, all that, there's all kinds of people making food, and you can just make it a challenge to make some of the recipes that you've seen them execute online. This is where real transformation happens. It's not in the budgeting app, it's not in the spreadsheet, it's in the replacement of the habit. Just like it says on the slide, debt freedom is sustained by habit replacement. There's a great book, Atomic Habits. I read it last year myself. They talk about habit stacking. So this is something you can do to go. I won't give you all the excerpts. You can even go to YouTube and get some of the excerpts yourself. But there's all kinds of tricks and techniques that you can deploy to habit stack in order to change behaviors. So Romans 13 and 8 says, let no debt remain outstanding. But I want to push you further than that. The old habit cannot remain outstanding either. The pattern has to go and something new has to take its place. That is stewardship in motion. So let's review. Let's just bring this thing home. The three shifts that break the debt cycle. So, in review, first, name the trigger. Observe what comes before the behavior. You cannot change what you haven't identified. Two, you want to build in the pause, create some space between the feeling and the action. Remember, that pause is going to protect that money that has a separate and probably should have a dedicated purpose. If you haven't yet learned how to assign a purpose to your dollars, again, I'm going to urge you to get into the Minding Our Business Financial Academy. It's a completely free community. It's robust. There's 9 free lessons that take you through 3 huge outcomes that will help you along this path. Third, definitely not the least important, but probably the most important, installing new programming, new habits. replacing that old habit of every Friday I go to the same sneaker store and buy the newest Jordans, or I go and walk through Marshalls and Ross or any of these other discount retailers and I pick up an outfit for the weekend. Those are the habits you're looking to change. Or maybe it's the week after payday and then you eat out every single day. Whatever it is for you, you're looking not just to remove that habit, you're looking to replace that habit with something you can sustain and something that benefits you in the long run. So the balance will follow the behavior. And when the behavior changes sustainably, systematically, the piece that follows is real. It's lasting. It's not just a paid off balance, it's a transformed relationship with the resources that God is placing in your hands. So before I let you go, I want to ask you something. What behavior has quietly been keeping you financially stuck? Not the balance, not your income, the behavior. Is it the impulse spending? Is it the emotional triggers I talked about? Is it that pressure of lifestyle? Social media does a great job at creating that pressure. Or is it the absence of a real plan? Whatever it is, I want you to name it tonight. Don't let it stay anonymous. You won't be able to fight it that way. So here's where I want you to start. First, if anything tonight hits home, if something landed, if you felt seen in any part of this conversation, go ahead and drop a fire emoji in the comments right now. Let me know you're with me. That tells me that this is landing, it helps, and it shows YouTube to that we're putting out meaningful content and more people can access it and engage with it. Second, if you want to help with this behavior change and help identify those triggers and build your pause system, comment the word cycle also in the comments, and I will get directly to you. We'll respond. We'll help you with an audit worksheet that you can help to identify the behaviors and begin to change them. Third, if you're ready to stop managing systems and start changing the system underneath your finances altogether, then the link to the MOB Foundations is in our description. That's where we can go deeper. Again, it's a free community. That's where we'll build the full structure for you. We'll start out with the mindset, we'll get you a plan, and then we'll build out your operating system together. So, in these last couple seconds here, I'd like to tell you wherever you are right now, whether you're just getting started or you've been in this cycle for years and you're tired of it, I need you to hear this. This is not a character flaw. You are not broken. You are not undisciplined. You are not bad with money. You have been operating without the right system. And systems can be changed. Habits can be replaced. Patterns can be broken. When the behavior changes, the balance will follow. God bless you. Keep minding your business. Thanks for joining us at the MOB Academy. Now stop scrolling and go mind your business.